gonna say it. Somebody should. Let's talk about two time. Let's talk about bum wine, yeah. You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where the bone thugs and are they in harmony? Help for Snowman.
You can make this another secret episode. Put it on vinyl.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
I have another plan for a secret episode.
Oh.
But for an even less available format.
What's less available than vinyl? But like, are you talking like wax cylinder?
Like an 8-track.
An 8-track would be one, but I am looking at mini disc.
Ooh.
Which I'm like, I don't think you could even. I'm sure you can't buy a new mini disc player, and even an old one, I think, can only be had for like hundreds of dollars on eBay of questionable
quality.
So, I mean, I'm reminded about episode 300 here as I'm like looking at it in front of me. And we had a plan to go to the library and use
their record player.
Yeah,
and we just
yeah,
never
but
did.
We never got around to that. I've got to like make a mental note to do that.
I have a copy of 300 because that's one I made for me, and I made one for Cassie because she made the artwork. And so she was like, you can have mine, and I was like, you don't treasure this as your most valuable. But anyway, so I've listened to hers on there. And I was like, I mean, it was funny. I remember recording it because I wanted it to be related to records.
Right.
And that's how I figured out what to do. And I was like, I think anyone else would have put more thought into what they were going to put on a record. Like,
you're like, this is just whatever this is going on the record.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I was just like, okay, I mean, it was fine. I was like, I guess it's one idea is to make a record and put a solid B- on it.
Yeah.
Commit to a physical format.
You're trying to put like your layup, your straight putt. You're like, yeah, it's not bad, but it's not great. Like,
yeah, like in some way it makes sense because there's like 5 copies in existence, so
it's
why go crazy on this one?
And so in a way, it's like your high quality filler episode.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, well, what we'll do, we'll just start because I add the music in later now.
Oh,
that's how fancy I've got.
It's not just play the music at the start.
Yeah, because that way I can control it a little better and it doesn't get all compressed.
It doesn't start out super loud and then go back down and go back up like you probably heard in some earlier episodes for you super fans.
Yeah, I mean, I still do it that way sometimes because I just get lazy. Well, remain lazy. I'm at the same level.
You're deciding what's more or less work, right?
Exactly.
And it's like somehow you're like, it's maybe a little bit less work to put in the music later as opposed to adjusting it now.
Exactly.
I guess I have noticed maybe something along those lines, like in a couple episodes where I think, there was the one where you like inserted that clip from Ghost, and then I think there was also something, maybe it was in an episode that Cassie was in, I feel like, where you like, I don't know, put something in later. I'm not sure. But yeah.
It is entirely possible that I would do something like, there have been a few times, and I have noticed that inserting it later is usually better for the overall listenability.
Like it makes it a little bit, like you said, you can balance it, you can ramp it up and out. And...
yeah, and I don't know, just it's easier in one sense, but it's easier to listen to, but harder to make.
Now, right now, you're wearing a Lucero hat and a Lucero shirt.
Yes.
Yep.
But yet no Lucero pants.
I don't own any Lucero pants. I used to have a Lucero belt buckle, but I broke it because I guess I got too fat for it. It was like, a belt buckle. I'm like trying to explain how a belt buckle works, which is dumb, but it's like a round piece of metal and it's got a knob and the knob goes in the hole and that's how a belt is. The knob broke off, but it also punched through the other side of the belt buckle. So there's like a hole in it. I kind of expected like, okay, yeah, if the knob came off over time, like
Yeah, it's just going to wear down.
But that it punched through the other side, I was like, that's what kind of made me feel like, okay, maybe I've put on some weight.
Something is going, like, because it's sharp enough to puncture. Well, it might be that it's just very sharp, but not very strong at the hilt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's say that.
The joint is not
that's
very
what
strong.
happened. It's a matter of physics, not.
It's strong in a forward direction, but not strong in a lateral direction.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's it's not a good feeling to break a belt buckle that way.
It's like it's how I feel about my knees, basically. Like they're strong in a forward direction, but like laterally, it's like, oh wait, that part hurts a little bit more. So
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's an over 40 joint on that belt buckle from the beginning. But anyway, then I replaced it with a helpful Snowman belt buckle, and that's worked just fine.
That's worked just fine.
Great.
So, I'm like, all right, maybe I have better quality belt buckles. But it's, I was like, well, either this will last, or if this breaks in 2 weeks, I've got like 15 more. So I can just keep going until they're all broken.
I like that this is your strategy, your approach to, I guess some key items of, I don't know, accessories or garments that you've just like, I'm just going to buy like 15 or maybe a box of 100.
Oh, yeah. Like I just bought jeans for the first time in a few years, and I just went and bought 5 pairs that are exactly the same because I was like, I know this works, and then I just don't have to think about it for a while.
Like you say, these fit.
Yeah.
And you won't have to worry later on, like, we were talking about this earlier today, but you don't have to worry about, like, will this get discontinued?
Yeah.
Will they be like, oh, well, we're going to change this a little bit?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're like, relaxed fit becomes slim fit, and then, like, slim fit becomes, like, extra skinny.
Well, then I gather the kids are like, slim fit is out now.
Yes.
So, but that never really worked for me anyway, so I just bypassed slim fit, so I got lucky that way. But then... another thing that here's what I've heard. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like you are both a little more in touch with the kids than I am. Ian, especially.
Sure.
By the kids, I mean like people who are like 20.
Yeah.
But I have heard that 2 terms have come back into popular use.
Okay.
2 pejoratives. Retarded and gay. I've heard they're swinging back in.
I'm not aware of this. Of course, I guess doing what I do, that would, there would be implications. So if I were to hear those terms.
Now, I would say retarded, no. Or retarded, I have not heard.
Okay.
And I think that, that's one that maybe is going on in certain spaces because, there's a lot of social media platforms. That's actually a word, as weird as it sounds on Reddit, that gets just flagged all the time.
Okay.
And so, digitally, I don't know how much it's in use. But I would say gay, I've heard a lot more.
Okay.
Not a ton more, but I've heard it a lot more than I would expect.
Huh.
Which, I thought, I was like, this seems like one of those words that's just not used pejoratively anymore, even by people who you would think might still do it.
But I also would say that it's among, it's hard to say if it's, widespread, because, when you say the youth...
Yeah.
I encounter it a lot in a specific set of circumstances, which is mostly young men who are at some type of gym, and they're all wearing, sort of merchandise or sweatshirts or pants or, identifiers with one of the nearby Christian universities.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, and so it's sort of we can just say it's Grand Canyon University, on this podcast. Where do I encounter this?
Yes.
It's at one of the climbing gyms I go to. Not the old school one, the new one.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, because you go to 2 different ones.
Right.
There's kind of an older...
There's a crunchy, older, more homemade one.
It's kind of you say this, and I think Peter used this term once in the previous episode, and it's not meant to be as a low quality thing, but it's closer to the shithole gym, right? Where it says this is what you need.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't, it has
Very basic.
very few like bells and whistles, not a lot of customization necessarily, but it's
Yeah.
like if you're walking off the street, and even if you're a pretty advanced climber, it's got everything you need.
Now, a climbing gym seems like something, I mean, I know nothing about this. So
Sure.
this is all question mark. Mm-hmm. Climbing gym seems to be like something that, yeah, it could go one of two ways. It can go that like hyper crunchy, almost seems like something that basically some guy kind of just started doing and then was like, oh, people actually want to use this, I guess, you know, and then it sort of turns into a business. You know what I mean? Like almost by accident. I don't know, like
Right.
it feels like you can see the iterations of it that have happened over the many years. And I don't know, like, yeah, some guy had a piece of it in his backyard. And then it was like, oh, every Saturday, like 5 people are coming over. And they're like, you should rent this warehouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things that gets into like maybe too much of a short and truncated history, but like a lot of climbing gyms just throughout the world started like just for like really hardcore climbers who wanted to train in an off season.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So the idea is like if you live in most of the world and you can't really go climbing through most of the winter,
Right.
you didn't want to be like, well, like with any sport, you say, well, if I'm going to take like 4 months off,
Right.
you're going to get worse, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to deteriorate. And so this was a way of being like, how can I keep something kind of going?
Well, it also seems like climbing is a sport that has that like weird push-pull between the sort of like climbing as a sport
Right.
versus climbing as like a hobby / lifestyle / like
Yes, definitely with the lifestyle. I mean, I'll say with the Crunchy Gym, it doesn't feel like they're trying to make a profit at this point. And I believe that is because the owner has kind of, he owns the space. He's kind of made enough profit. Mm-hmm. And so he is basically maintaining a community
right.
that is sort of centered around a lifestyle. And so I think, yeah, he basically is just like, well, all I need to do is make enough money to maintain
Yeah.
this community / lifestyle.
Yeah, and the Crunchy Shithole Gym is one of the oldest continuously operating climbing gyms in the U.S. Like it's maybe the 3rd oldest, might be the, you know, and it might be the oldest.
Oh, okay.
Like it's hard to tell. Like it's in basically easily in the top 5.
Now, see, okay, because like where you live, I'm guessing summer is the off season.
Yes,
for climbing
because like it's too hot.
right, you'll be baked on
You'll
the side
die.
of a cliff. Okay, so there seems to be that side, and then I'm guessing there's also the side of climbing that like indoor climbing gyms come about because when it turns into like an Olympic sport or whatever,
Right.
and they're like, okay, well, in order for this to be a sport that we like judge, you kind of have to make, you know, 2 side-by-side things that are identical, and like we have to have certain, I don't know, way it becomes more like codified, right? Like there's probably certain building code, let's say, of how far apart should these holds be, and like how many of this type of hold should you have on a route, and you know what I mean? Like
You would think that, but going to a lot of indoor places that is not standardized across gyms at all.
okay,
And most gyms will set their own standards,
okay,
but some gyms will not set standards much at all.
Okay.
Like it's just kind of like my older Shithole Gym, they actually have very like strict standards of like simple things like if you have like a hold where you're putting your feet, like something you're standing on, right? And they have a maximum distance that a hold they expect you to reach to with your hands is
right,
from the foot. And they have that based a lot on how difficult the route is supposed to be.
okay,
Like
right,
if
that's what I was thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like they have that, and they also have like one of the things they have is they also have some standards. Like there's a level of difficulty in the, we'll talk about different like top rope or something else if that matters. But they kind of say at a certain difficulty level, they don't expect you to be able to do a pull-up. Like they say above this difficulty level, they say just as a physical thing, you have to be able to do a pull-up to do it. Or like they say, if you can't do a pull-up, you might not be able to climb this.
Okay.
Whereas like below this difficulty level, there should be no point where like a pull-up of any kind is required. Like they say, that's kind of like their guesstimate. And also on the little side of their cart, when they're putting holds on the wall, one of the things they have on the side of their cart is they actually have all of the route setters' heights and what's called an ape index.
Is that the length of your arms to your...
Ape index is, it's basically like a ratio of like when you spread out your arms like you do a T pose or a Jesus Christ pose because of the season. It's sort of like asking... It's asking like if you sort of have a positive ape index, you're sort of like your wingspan basically is longer than your height.
Right, okay.
And if you have a negative one, which most women actually I've learned have a negative ape index.
Okay.
Do men have a...
Men are more likely to have a neutral or slightly positive, but women are more likely to have one that's slightly negative.
Men have arms have like a larger span than their height.
Some men do. Like most people.
I mean, I know, like what's his name, Michael Phelps, but like normal men do too.
No, most people usually have something around a 0 ape index.
Okay.
Right, which is basically proportional.
Okay.
Some people will have one that's like, but the idea there is that you say like, okay, someone has an ape index of 2, which means they have 2 inches like longer reach than their height. So it's easier for them to like reach to something, right? And you can't just measure how tall it is because their reach is even farther. And they have this on the side of the cart because they're able to say, all right, like if I need someone else, because part of when someone's setting something inside to get at the difficulty, you have to have other people climb it and test it.
Sure.
Like the other employees do it.
And now you.
And sometimes me, because I'm there when they're setting things. And part of what they do is they have that height there set to say, I need a short person to test it, or I need this person to test it. Right. Okay. So that way they can say, that's an easy way to get at that. Some other gyms I've gone to, it's pretty clear that they don't do a lot of testing.
They just kind of throw stuff up on there and see what happens?
Well, sometimes it can be they just have someone throw it up, they set the difficulty, and that's what it is. I know this because I watched the person who was the route setter. He climbed something very easily because he was just very tall.
Right.
And I was like trying to climb the same thing, and I could do it, but I had to do a lot more like jumping, basically. Like jumping and leaning over to reach stuff.
Right.
And he was trying to show someone who I think was his girlfriend, but she didn't seem that into it. And she had a hard time.
Probably his girlfriend, yeah.
Possibly.
That would make sense.
Yeah. But like she was so much shorter. And a lot of stuff he was doing was just very difficult for her. Because, like, he says, oh, we'll just reach over from here and grab the thing very easily.
Right.
That was just not possible for her. And so that's what I get at with the idea of, like, some places have a lot of, like, very strict standards, and other, of trying to be consistent, at least with inside their gym.
Right.
Other places have, like, I'm just going to set it this way and everyone else can suck it.
Okay.
Sort of attitude.
Now, is there also like, because I could see this being both ways, right? Like I could see the crunchy type gym kind of doing a randomizer because it's like, hey man, that's what nature is like. You know what I mean? It's not like they built this cliffside for climbing purposes. So whatever, do you know what I'm saying? Like, or I could see this sort of more, I don't know, corporate gym, I guess we could call it, them being more like, well, we just throw random stuff up there because whatever.
One of the bigger things that's probably a factor is that the crunchy gym makes a lot of it made a lot of money, and it still makes a lot of money on birthday parties. Like
for like
birthday
kids?
Parties. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so part of a big thing they think about is like, can a kid climb this?
I gotcha.
And it's not just like the team climbing kids who are like super strong and training and have no fear and have nothing else to do.
So they kind of always need to have some area in there that it's like a 9-year-old who's never done this before could have some success.
Right. They don't want to do it that way. Whereas like the other gym I go to that's much more corporate, like it's honestly targeting, like it's probably closer to the tech bro type of thing. Or even within that sort of like tech bro type of thing, I occasionally go to in the area like 2 different things that have 2 very different vibes, if that makes sense. Like one place I go has probably a vibe that would be familiar to like a kind of CrossFit sort of thing.
Okay.
And it has, because it's like a, for a long time it advertised as like, we're a veteran-owned business, and we're like, and everything, that their sort of overall aesthetic was very like tactical.
Oh, okay.
And so it was trying to like, in a way, it was trying to run away from the crunchy part. Like,
yeah.
And I
actively distancing from the like,
Yes.
Climbing is about being in touch with nature or whatever. And it's like, fuck that. It's conquering nature.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's sort of the parts where it felt like, and I like this place, and I like some of the people, I like this, it's perfectly fine, but it feels like, as an aesthetic, it feels very try-hardy.
Yeah.
Because you're still going in there, and there's still all of these, like, bright, colorful, like, dildo-shaped holds.
Right.
And it's sort of like, it feels like compensating for something, whereas in the crunchy gym, that just totally, like, fits, right?
Yeah.
You're like, everything's kind of, like, tie-dyed and colorful, so it all kind of, like, blends together.
Right.
That if you go too much into the CrossFit, tactical, black camo type of thing, it starts to feel a little bit more like compensating.
I was like shopping for a backpack, and I got this one, but like they were listing pros and cons, and I knew I found the right list, because in a con category was like, this backpack looks a little tactical, so if you're not into that. And I was like, that's a good thing to list as a con that I hadn't really thought about.
But one of the corporate gym that I go to more often to get back around is where I hear the young men with the Grand Canyon University, which has the sort of like it's like a Christian private Christian school.
Oh, okay.
Stuff on there. That's where I hear people saying that's gay the most.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is also interesting, because that sort of corporate gym has a bunch of stuff around that says like, we accept people of all types of like body types and races and sexual orientations.
Right.
So that's where I feel like it's the big disconnect for me, in that maybe my vibe is that I think people are saying, like, the young folks are saying it more when they don't think older folks are listening in.
Like it's among the youth saying it to each other.
Don't hear it in like classes very much. I don't hear it like walking around a lot. Like, it's one of those, it feels maybe the thing that youths will say when they think no one else is listening.
Right.
But they won't say, like, they won't say it to me, and they don't say it in a classroom context, like, ever. And I don't hear it, like, even when they're just talking amongst themselves. But honestly, the youth don't really talk that much amongst themselves. Like, I don't think I've had to, like, stop classes for people talking to each other.
Right.
In, like, 7 or 8 years.
Oh, okay.
But that's where I would say I've heard that's gay the most.
So does it feel like it's had a bit of a comeback in terms of people using it?
I think it's one of those things that it has a resurgence in that it's not zero.
Okay. But it's not wildly in use?
I would say no. Like,
okay.
It's sort of like, I think because it feels like it's having a comeback because it exists again.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also one of those, and it does feel like it's more among the youth, because when I'm going to my crunchy shithole gym, the hours I tend to go to tends to be all retired folks or older folks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's mostly the old people who just like, I think it's one of those words that maybe just the way some folks speak, like they don't have a need for that, right? Like,
I see. They're not often putting something down in that way, where
right.
that would be where they have to choose a word to do that.
Or like where most people will say something like, honestly, where people say like, that sucks, or that sounds rough, or that's difficult, like where it's existential as opposed to that's gay.
That's
like as a way of, like...
That's what I think is so weird about if it is coming back around, just because it's like... It's like polio coming back or something, where I'm like, I thought we eradicated this.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was kind of
exactly.
just gone, and I don't... But maybe it came back. Maybe there was like an open channel still. Because I do feel like you could say something is gay if it was like in a super ironic, something like, bro, you call your wife? That's gay. You know what I mean? Like, where it's so obviously not... It's so obviously heterosexual, heteronormative, that you could say it was gay because you're kind of making fun of yourself for saying like I don't know.
It comes up
Do you know what I'm
online
saying?
a
Like,
lot where like there's the Reddit threads where people have the joke of like, fellas, is it gay to have sex with a woman?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're doing something like that, that seemed to me to be the last vestige of that's gay.
I have seen those threads.
Yeah. So maybe that's how, like, maybe that germ stayed alive and kept it alive in the culture somehow.
I mean, I think a lot of it is that it's young men. And I feel like in an earlier era where like something being called gay as an insult was something more common among men than it was among like young women, like even in
Sure.
our heyday. But I think when women are not using it, like when young women aren't really using it, like that might be less of a, you know, this is making a rampant resurgence versus like,
Right.
maybe my experience of it is like making a resurgence among a certain group of young men who might be coming from a milieu, like a sort of community, where like a little bit of casual homophobia is not really punished. If that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
could see it as maybe a almost like a backlash. I mean, that would kind of make sense because it does seem like a lot of things are happening as backlash at the moment. But yeah, I guess I agree with you on the sort of like polio thing because it just. I thought like Gen Z, it seems like Gen Z in general just has like is much less strict about gender norms, at least in my like
Yeah,
exposure to Gen Z. It seems like there's less strictness about gender norms on average. Granting that yes, there is, you know, a span there, but they seem less strict about gender norms and more supportive of like, you know, LGBTQ identities. And so it does seem to me like it would be odd because they don't view that as like someone would have to view that on some level as a negative thing about someone.
Right.
And it seems like they don't even view it as negative. And
Right.
so like I don't even understand like how they would come to use it in a disparaging way unless it somehow became unmoored from its original definition in the way that like scumbag has become unmoored
Right.
from its original definition.
I feel like I can say scumbag in like a work meeting.
Yes.
Even though when you really break it down, you're like, that's a pretty...
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot.
It is.
I mean, well, I guess with the gender norms thing, since we're having today's like the first part of this podcast will be complain about the youth.
I'm not complaining about I'm just sort of
Just
like
trying to understand
mystified.
what's going on right
Yeah.
now.
Is this happening? Should I start saying gay?
I think when
Is it worse to leave the gay people out or the youth out? I don't know.
I think it also comes with, I think, you know, where there's the Gen Z, the youth. I think there's a more public like idea of wanting to affirm those identities without necessarily wanting to interact with them. And that one thing I notice a lot when I'm teaching is that more and more the men and the women don't sit next to each other.
Okay.
Like there's kind of a lot more of like the boys will sit all with the boys, the girls will sit with the girls. And there's not a lot of like people sitting next to each other because they kind of know each other. There's a lot more of like the boys sit on one part, the girls sit on another part.
Weird.
Yeah,
And
weird.
so that seems to be a lot more common than it used. It's not universal, but like a lot more common. And so I think there's a little bit more.
And then you go on a tirade in the classroom. You're like,
Yeah.
how are you ever going to get laid in college if you're always sitting with the boys? Dummies.
It's sort of. Well,
That's
it's
in the syllabus.
it is a strange thing because I do get asked by the boys like after class, like, hey, how do I meet women? How do I do this? And I'm kind of, part of me is like, well, I honestly say, well, you got to listen to what they say. And that's a good starting
Maybe
place.
talk to a woman.
But that's kind of feel like
good
yeah, you kind of got to talk to them. And that's probably a good starting place. And, but I think that maybe what I'm getting at is that there's sort of there's an idea of what someone should do, but not necessarily like the follow through on it in their life. Like it's the people know what the correct code of conduct, like then they know what the correct answer is. Like if someone says like, do you accept LGBTQ people will say yes. But then having to kind of do that in your life is perhaps
you think they may not actually be doing that.
Yeah, and some of those ideas that we might have is sometimes like we exist in our own kind of communities. I don't want to say like bubbles or silos or things.
Sure.
But sometimes I do wonder if something like that's gay kind of is preserved in like the seeds are dormant in certain communities. Right? And I kind of press upon, among young men, maybe it preserves a little bit more than like old, like, men just kind of, a lot of men just kind of age out of it in a certain way. Like, I don't know how much it is, and part of that, like, that's gay thing is the insecurity with your masculinity. Like, something not masculine is bad. But, like, you get a little older, maybe you get a little bit less concerned about, like, am I a real man or not? Or that concern takes a different shape.
Or you meet a gay guy who's 10 times manlier than you are, and you're like, well, I guess that's out the window.
Right, you're like, well, yeah, you're kind of like, you have that idea of it. But that also gets to that idea of, like, different exposure, right? Where you meet a gay guy who's much manlier than you are, or, like, you meet a gay guy who's, like, seems basically like you, but just as attracted to dudes. And so sometimes when you're a really young man, and especially if you're a young man that has a very, like, who might be in a different silo or a different filter bubble, you kind of have an idea of, like, gay men as, like, the yas queen, effeminate sort of thing. And when you're insecure in your own masculinity, you use that as an insult in a way that when you have a little bit more security in it, it just doesn't have that same, like, you start using, like, that sucks, or, that's too bad, or
now, okay.
Stop acting like an asshole instead of stop acting gay.
Two other possibilities,
Sure.
Perhaps. I know what you were saying about, like, the youth and all that. I do wonder sometimes if it's like this is, a sort of youth rebellion. In other words, like, I bet a lot of parents right now, if their kids came home, like if you had a 12-year-old and they came home and they were like, I don't want to eat hamburgers, that's gay. I bet they would get the, like,
yeah,
we don't say that. Like, where did you hear that? Like, whatever. Right. And so it is like the taboo. And it's like, I wonder sometimes, like, swear words and stuff maybe are a little less taboo today than they were 20 years ago or 40 years ago. Right. And so it's like, well, the linguistic taboos are,
That's true. Yeah. And I could definitely see, like, parents in our milieu maybe saying, like, fuck in front of their kids, but like if the kid was to say gay in a pejorative way, then it would be like a record scratch, like, okay, let's sit down,
let's have a talk
and have a talk.
The other one I wonder about is, like, so maybe, when I was a young man, like a child, gay was like a pejorative, and to me it was like never really, you didn't think about it like, I'm calling this person a homosexual. It was like, I don't know, it was just a word. And I wonder if maybe it, like, translated through the years. And so now, because the youth is, like, more LGBTQ friendly and aware, but then they still have this pejorative word that's out there, and so it's almost become divorced from its meaning.
Okay, so so you think maybe it has become sort of like
the way that's
it's possible,
or it has some, like, like a lot of different meanings, like the way bitch does, for example.
Yeah,
like sort of for someone of my mom's generation, like, the only time you use that was as an insult, right? It was nothing else. But people have tried to, like, recapture it or, like, redeem it or something else.
Bad bitch,
right? We can go to brunch at a place called Breakfast Bitch.
Right.
We can.
And sort of like someone will just put that on a sign, or like even here in Greeley, Colorado, there's a couple of places called Sexy Sammy's.
Right.
Which I think as a child or even as a teenager, that would have been scandalous.
Sure. Yeah, or like you could have like a coffee mug that says boss bitch, right?
Yes.
Like, it wouldn't be super a problem in most likely scenarios.
But I think what kind of came to me about, like, why gay might have some sprouting and retarded doesn't seem to in the same way is that Gen Z and the youth are talking a lot more about like neurodivergence, like ADHD. They're all on, like being on medications and things. And it's kind of like the line between somebody like that, a lot of people who have different, like more medicalized and probably better terms for like what they're like would have been labeled as retarded, like when we were younger. Like that's sort of like, there's a lot more gray area of like, if you're on medications for 3 different things, like you're kind of disabled in a way. Right. And so there's a little bit like it's easier for someone to say gay is over there. Right.
Oh, right.
Gay is not me and not my friends, but like,
but we're all a little retarded.
Yeah, it's sort of like we're all like, where's the line come through, right? Like
at least that they're all kind of disabled in some way. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think it might be a little different just because like there was a campaign, like an actual concerted campaign a few years ago among, certain, I guess, disability advocacy organizations to make the R word I guess prohibited and to get people to stop using it. And so because there was, you could even call it, something closer to like, it's definitely a top-down type of a situation. So, maybe something closer to like astroturfing or something like that, but that you have, a concerted effort and campaign. And so people might just, I don't know, I feel like when you're trying to sort of transform what a word means or the sort of connotative meaning of a word, that's a little different than the word just kind of floating around out there and like organically transforming.
There's also a bit where maybe the subversion has a different consequence in that, like, to put it bluntly, gay is not a protected class at work, right? Depending on where you live. Like, like if you use the word gay at a workplace, right, in a professional context.
I think orientation's usually a protected thing.
Yeah.
Federally or state?
Yeah, no, not every state has protections, but but there's federal protections.
What I'm getting at here is that disability is federally protected. So like the sort of...
Well, yeah, so it's like,
Well, okay, but yeah, I think I see what you're saying as far as like, there's like the whole ADA, there's all this stuff that's like...
There's a sort of like a bunch of legal things close by where like the more direct thing. But I think I still go by that original idea of like, sort of the R word doesn't come in because like that line between is a little blurrier.
Yeah. I think what makes them similar in my mind as far as use is it's both groups that I'm like, guys, do they not have it hard enough already? Like,
that's true.
Like,
right, yes.
I don't know.
Just like...
It's hard to make the argument that it's like... maybe it's like... maybe retarded has had less of a resurgence because, when you say that and you're like, that's hurtful to this person, and you see that person and you're like, yeah, they don't have it easy. Whereas like maybe a gay person, it's easier to fool yourself into being like, well, I don't know, look at him. He's ripped. He's got a 6-pack. He's making good money. Right. He's fine. I don't know. Maybe there's something about the victim.
Oh, the idea of sort of punching up or punching down, like some confusion about like who is up and who's down, maybe.
Yeah, like almost if I knew someone who was gay who was like succeeding in life a lot more than me, I would be that would feel like punching up. Whereas someone who had a disability that was not thriving, and I'd be like, yeah.
There's probably is something too in a larger cultural context of there's a bit more tolerance for like a casual homophobia in a way that a casual like dislike of disabled people isn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. Like if you get into those, even if you get into those things like manosphere type of stuff on the internet, they will have some stuff that's homophobic, but they're not going to come out and say something like, once you get into the like developmentally disabled people should be liquidated, you're like, okay, you're in like a different a different realm, like a different zone
pretty
here.
bad.
Right. People don't like, you can't sort of, it's harder to sort of frog in a boiling pot to get to someone to that point.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you know, a lot of people have someone in their family who is developmentally disabled. And so that's like a real quick way to like ruin a relationship, is to just like let that fly and then find out like when they're like, yeah, I have a cousin or whatever. And then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, or like I think it's easy to imagine the difficulty of like being in a wheelchair, or at least, you know, you wouldn't imagine the full scope, but it's a pretty short drive to be like, oh, that would suck. You know what I mean? Like this part of it would suck, or that part would suck, or like if you couldn't hear and you're like, oh my God, I couldn't listen to this amazing podcast right now. But like, and maybe the other side is like not as easy to imagine how that's difficult to live with.
Right.
In a way. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the final thing to say about this is like, if I wrote a linguistic book about like, how did this develop? What's the history of this? And it was called Gay Retarded.
Yes.
Do you think I'd be more likely a guest on conservative podcasts or a guest on progressive podcasts? Depending, just title and like short blurb about like the history of these words. What do you think would be a more likely
linguistic history
path for me?
Well, first of all, I think the problem is like anytime it was listed online, there'd be asterisks in it. Like there would be like,
yeah, it'd be hard to like even sort of talk about it.
G asterisk Y.
It is a rough title.
Yeah.
And like Book Talk keeps censoring it, you know, because it's like, no.
It's like, how do you even get to your audience if your audience can't even like hear the title?
Like to just be put up there. Like it took a long time for like, what is that, Harry Frankfurt's book on bullshit?
Yeah.
Which was like it's a short book, but it's like a fairly like linguistic philosophy type of book.
I picked that, we had it at the library and I picked it up because I was like, well, I want to see what this is. And I read like 2 pages and was like, oh, fuck this. This is super boring.
Which is exactly the thing of like, you could hand that to any kid who's like, you know, who loves that word. Like if you wanted to get them to stop saying that word. Yeah. Like, here you go.
Make them think it's boring.
Yeah. And you can use this word as long as you read this entire book.
Even if you have the interview with the guy, and it's like, well, I don't have to read this book, but you're going to listen to the interview with the guy. And you're like, look, if you're going to get bored by the book, you're going to get bored by the guy too. Like,
yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe conservative podcasts would probably be more likely to invite you on. However, I don't think they'd really read it. And so, like, if you started actually then talking about it, I think they would be like, I think it would become a very, like, awkward and strange conversation. And maybe at, like, an unreleased episode, maybe they just, like, trash it.
I would honestly say,
like, we're just gonna, like, not.
Having browsed around a lot of, like, fairly popular conservative podcasts, they don't have much about books in general. Right? That's just not a thing that.
Yeah, but like, they like transgressive though. They like transgressing. They like
the idea of it, but I think that's where it would kind of be an episode that maybe starts, but then it would run aground because it's not what they thought it was.
Right. That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the big problem I would have is, I guess I don't know this for sure, but my suspicion is like the conservative podcast sphere has less readers in it than a more progressive podcast sphere. It would be my guess. It's probably an unfair assumption. Well, I guess there's probably readers of a certain kind of book.
Yeah, it was Bill O'Reilly. He had all those killing, all these.
Yes, but that's more. You're thinking in the boomer era of conservatism.
I guess that's true. That was like 20 years ago. You're right.
I would say it's probably a little different, but I think it's more probably if you have those like progressive or left-wing podcasts, there's an idea that you should be reading. Whereas those right-wing podcasts, it's kind of like they don't care if you don't read as much. Like, that's not as big a deal.
So if I was trying to like sell books, which would be the whole point, I would be better off in the probably progressive side.
You would probably get people to, you'd get interviewed about a book. I mean, you have stuff that's kind of in the in-betweeny zone of like...
I think you could probably sell merch.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's sort of like...
With the book's title emblazoned on it?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Then I'd be living my own nightmare of like, why did I do this? This was a terrible idea. Why didn't I just call it something normal and then sell 5 copies and then just be done with it?
There's some that might, like, probably the closest you could get is like a Joe Rogan podcast because like he occasionally has authors on, so it wouldn't be like quite as out there.
Yeah.
Like his podcast is hard to label exactly politically. I would not label it at this point a progressive podcast. That might be a little more challenging.
Well,
It seems like it doesn't even have an I don't think it has a political orientation. It's just kind of like experimental. Like, let's just talk about experimental ideas.
yeah, I feel like if you plotted it out, you know, and guests and like topics or whatever, it would be kind of all over the place. But then, like, okay, you know, the other reason that I shouldn't, I mean, among the many reasons, but like chief among them is like, even if it worked and then people were like, we have this guest on or whatever, I would be known for the rest of my life as the guy who wrote that book with that title.
Right.
You know what I mean? That
Would. You'd be like Salman Rushdie or something, maybe, you know? Like, where it's just like, that's like the only thing you ever did.
Yeah.
Wait, you'd have people pointing, you'd be like, hey, that's the gay retarded guy.
Exactly. And like, you know, it would become my Clerks to Kevin Smith,
Yes.
or my Fight Club to Chuck Palahniuk. You know what I mean? Like, and no matter what I did after that, even if it was objectively better,
Right.
That's true.
It's the thing
this
people
would be
know.
I could not escape from that.
Coming back to Clerks, I remember the point where I think maybe where I kind of have an idea of when it felt like people of our age group where those words had kind of, you know, they'd been almost excised. I remember the Clerks cartoon. Where like at one point they were talking in the Clerks cartoon and one person says like is reading something or like something happens and the person says that's retarded. Another character says you can't say the word retarded anymore, and the character says that's retarded and queer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it was meant as a joke and also put in the mouth of a character who's like not the person you're supposed to emulate or be like. They are the
Right. He's clearly wrong.
He's clearly in the wrong, right?
Yeah.
He's clearly like not a good person.
And that was probably in like 2000 or so.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
where it's starting to, that's where the sort of that movement that you had described, Jen, it started to really, like it had taken enough of a hold.
It's just like, it's funny because like things come back around and, you know, I get that. And like we've been alive long enough now where it's like even unlikely, you know, Jinkos are kind of back around, which I never thought.
Yeah, big
would come
pants are back.
Yeah. Which,
Big pants are back.
Well, wait, it's big pants are back, but like Jinko's big is not back.
Jinkos are back.
What?
I told you this and you didn't believe me.
Yeah, I know. I know it sounds crazy, but like if you go online and try to buy Jinkos, just do it. Do yourself a non-favor and find out how much it costs to buy a pair of Jinkos. And then like people, and like I don't know how back they are because I don't know how in they ever were. You know, like I knew like 2 guys who had Jinkos back in the day and it was sort of like something everybody sort of wanted but sort of didn't and was too expensive for most people.
Well, people like the idea of having Jinkos, and maybe you would get the Jinkos and wear them. People who had them would get them and wear them like once.
Well, I think the other thing was you had to have parents who were willing, because the time of life when you would want to wear Jinkos didn't coincide with the time of life when you had a job. So it was like you'd have to convince your mom or dad to buy them for you, which is fucking impossible. And now I'm not so sure. I think it's slightly older kids are, you know, maybe have a job and or their parents are like, I always wanted my mom to buy me Jinkos, so fuck it, I'll buy Jinkos for my kid. You know what I mean?
It's the kind of thing where maybe like if someone our age is buying their kid Jinkos.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like, oh, this is a thing I recognize, so it's not as like foreign to me.
Right.
Yeah, it's not as crazy because it's like, well, this is the second time of this, so I guess
Right,
it's
the second
like,
loop around.
Yeah.
If this is the resurgence, and so you're like, oh, we could do that, but I mean, Jen asks me sometimes like what the youth are wearing.
Yeah.
And I often have to say that honestly, when it comes to fashion or clothes, because where I live, I encounter the young people where it's very hot.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that could be on trend in the rest of the country that's just not practical when it is 115 degrees out. Like,
Sure.
granted, younger people are willing to be uncomfortable somewhat, or like there was a group like the time where like to be uncomfortable if they're going to look good.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's kind of like some things that might be on trend, because when you said like Jinkos are in, I'm like, I did not see any Jinkos. I haven't seen any, but it's also that's exactly the thing that you would not want to wear when it's super hot outside.
Yeah.
Like that's probably the worst thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, and there are some fashion trends, right? Like, guys' shorts have flipped. So they're like opposite of Jinkos now, where it's like they're wearing shorts that guys would wear in the 60s or the 70s that are shorter and tighter. And like back when we were young, that was like insane. You would never do that. It was how close to pants can my shorts be?
Yes.
It has to be below the knee, or else they're not even shorts.
Someone needs to make an official ruling about where shorts turn into pants, because there really no. But like, okay, that's the thing, right? Like fashion and stuff, you just kind of accept, like, I don't know, it comes back around, and like, because there's no logic to it anyway. It's not like the first time Jinkos were popular, it was for like a good reason, and now so there's popular again for no good reason again. But like a word like, gay or something used as a pejorative, there's like a resistance to it, I would think, that would make it more difficult for like a word like that to come back around. Whereas Jinkos, I'm like, whatever, like no one's gonna be like, bro, that's
I mean,
messed
also
up.
with fashion, it's like there's only so many things you can do. Like there's big pants, there's thin pants, and I mean, that you've got like pants are all on a kind of continuum, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas like words are just like all over the place.
Well, I'm thinking about words are different. I was reading something else just denser about words, so we don't have to get into the density part. But basically the idea is like words, we need a common language to be able to understand each other. Like we need common ground.
Sure.
Or to not be understood.
But with fashion, it's easier to kind of do your own thing.
That's true.
In a way that like we need language, like we kind of need some common understandings of like what is acceptable to say in a certain context in order to like have a context. Whereas with fashion, and also would probably say among the youth today, there is no mainstream in the way that there was when we were younger. Like there's not or if there is a mainstream, it's not as dominant. Like even if we say Jinkos are back, if that could be back among like a very small subset of people that other people just would never.
I mean, I agree with you that there's like a weaker sort of sense of mainstream, although I do think that fashion actually still has a kind of language to it, I guess, but it's just people are just kind of more limited by what's possible. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but
I just like to imagine there's probably some, I don't know if they're former or current still juggalos out there who are just like making a mint on eBay right now because they're like, fuck it, I'll sell all these Jinkos.
I hope so. That warms my heart. That idea warms my heart.
Everyone's buying, like all of a sudden, like all the TikTok kids are going to the Juggalo store.
Yeah,
because that's where they can get like Jinkos, and then Insane Clown Posse somehow takes off among the youth.
There's gotta be like, a 20-year-old young woman in college or something who someone called a juggalo, and she's just like, what? Like, no idea what they're talking about.
They're just walking along, and they're hearing all this like whoop whoop to people, and like they're like, what are you catcalling me? It's like, no, it's family, man.
Yeah, they're just like, I have no idea. Someone sprayed Faygo soda all over me. I don't understand what's happening. Because I'm wearing these pants.
I've adopted this thing. I just like the little dreadlock man with the hatchet.
All right. We can put this topic to bed. I'm not going to write a book with that title. I've decided.
Okay.
I probably it never was, but now it's firmly decided.
Firmly decided. You're not going to make enough money on it, and you won't get on the podcasts you want to go on.
Yeah, and I guess I'll think it over whether I want to start using those words as pejoratives in order to appeal to the youth market.
I don't think it has a lot of upside. Like, that's the thing. Is I don't know what unless
The
you're
risk reward isn't good here.
yeah, unless you're trying to get a certain type, because maybe my encounters with it is there's a certain type of dude, and it's not really the kind of dude that you don't. Basically, that kind of dude already listens to this podcast. Like, if that makes sense. Or you're not going to bring in that type of dude with those words.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to probably go
I was
a little...
mildly insulted for a second there because I was like, you're saying that idiots already listen to this, like, which is probably true.
Like, it's not going to bring them in. Like, they're already either in, or you're going to have to go a lot further to bring them in, or go in a different direction.
Oh, I'd have to be more outrageous than simply using a couple words.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's true. I guess that's true. Maybe it's better, too, to just use sort of more timeless feeling language. Because, like, if I was talking about glizzies and skibbities and whatever, then 6 months later it would be like, what? This guy is so far behind. Because a podcast is kind of... Someone could pick it up and it feels like something that was recorded today, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it was several months ago and I was using very hip lingo.
Where you're just saying how skibbity something is, and yeah, you're like, that's timeless, it'll last forever.
Okay, so you said
I did.
You had, now that we talked about that for a super long time, you said you had a thing.
I had a thing, and I think this is an important thing because one of the things we have been doing while we were here, like while Jen and I were here in Colorado, and something we've been doing just generally, or at least I've been doing generally, is watching a lot of stuff about food.
Uh-huh.
And we've had...
Because you were kind of trying to get our mom into a food show.
Yeah.
I think it was mostly unsuccessful.
Yeah.
I think she was polite about the last thing that we watched because it didn't completely sort of turn her off, but I think she was still also being polite about that.
It didn't make her actively angry.
Well,
yeah, I think except for the last episode of it that she watched, that actually I think did annoy her.
What was the show and what was the last episode?
It was Alton Brown's Good Eats.
Oh, okay.
And the thing of it was...
Why did the last episode, why did that kind of push her over the edge?
Maybe it's good to go back a couple steps.
Okay.
And that, like, one of the things we were watching a lot of food shows, right? And, like, something would be like, okay, this is not very educational. It's not teaching me a recipe. It's too fast-paced. So wanting something that's, like, more focused, slower paced...
Yeah, she didn't like the fast edits, the fast, which I will concede. I don't love the sort of edits have gotten a lot faster.
Yep. You watch like a Hell's Kitchen, and you're just like, my God, there's like 10 cuts per second.
Yes.
And it's like flying around, and there's sound effects and flames and like.
Yeah, it's like I don't need that many cuts. Like, can I just like focus my eyes on something for like a whole 3 seconds, like. And
it's like we watched like Iron Chef America, which is kind of like a competition show, so it is a bit more like a sport than it is like teaching you to cook.
But that's also like a pretty heavily produced.
Right.
They do a lot in post production to
amp it up. And like, and our mom's complaint is like, oh, this is all faked, and like a lot of stuff is there, and I'm like,
oh, sure.
I'm like, yeah, it's not going to be exactly like it is presented.
Do you think this is a little bit of a generational thing too, where like I think our generation is a little more used to like what we're gonna call like it's not quite total solid concrete reality. You're like, well, yeah, there's some things like things are shot out of order on this show, and then they put it together and create a little narrative and whatever. And I feel like we're just accepting of that. Like, it's like, yeah, it's fine.
I think there's a suspension of disbelief that maybe younger folks are more willing to do. And also, I do think there's a little bit of people our age and a little bit younger have like tried to make something themselves. Like they've made a podcast or a video. Like more of them have made more videos, where I think about like the number of times like I've made a short, what I'll call like a short video. It's like I've probably made tens or hundreds of them. Whereas I think someone our mom's age like has probably shot home movies, and then that's it.
Right.
Like they don't really make a lot of stuff media-wise. So like
they don't edit narrative very often and don't necessarily think of it like, there's certain things like you think, I just want to see this unedited, uncut, and then if you saw it that way, you'd be like, "Oh, this is unbearable.
This is unbearable."
This sucks.
Right, but more people our age have at least that sort of like baseline knowledge of like what you put into like a microphone or what you record is not what comes out like as directly, or like they at least there's at least some understanding of that.
Sure.
But I think but going back to our mom and food shows, it's like we tried
No.
was it like Guy Fieri's like the game show where he's like going through the supermarket,
The grocery games.
Yeah,
That's never gonna fly. Her and Guy Fieri, it's just not gonna work.
Okay.
I think that was
I
like,
could tell you that right
we
now.
wanted something that was like a little odd, right? Or we were just like, I think it popped up and we're like, Jen and I had seen it before and we're like, okay, let's try that.
Well, it has some structure to
Right.
it. Like, it's got, yeah.
We tried Iron Chef because we're like, okay, you know what? Like, because our mom's objection to the grocery games is like, oh, they're using like gravy from a can, like kind of this is too low class.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so we got to Iron Chef, which is like in the total opposite direction.
We thought like, okay, yeah, well, here you go. Here's
Here's a huge table of, expensive
gourmet
ingredients.
like treats.
And it's kind of like, okay, this is too fast paced. This is too like, crazy. You're not really learning anything. And so
yeah, she wanted, I think, like a Julia Child,
Yeah,
like
okay.
teaching you how to make something, and there's a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried after that night, we tried the James May show, Oh Cook, which got a little bit of a better reception because it's slower paced.
It's vaguely educational.
It's like, but I think it was also driven a lot by personality, which the other ones really aren't.
It's a much more paced show.
And so, but she didn't like that enough because she was like, this isn't like, am I cooking the recipe, I guess.
I think also she kind of was like, well, I mean, I like a little James May, but I don't know if I want more James May.
The length of the show was a bit too much, where I think those Oh Cooks are like 40 minutes.
Oh, I see.
And maybe she wanted something that was a bit too much, right? So it's like the one episode, maybe wasn't going to come back for another one.
Right.
At least not the next day.
At least not the next day.
The RDA on James May for her is lower than...
And I can kind of get that, where maybe someone says, I like this for one episode once a week. It's that thing like where I used to watch House and be like, I can watch this once a week.
Yeah.
But if I watch like the marathon, the strings start to show of like how these are all kind of the same. Or like,
you're like, oh, I wonder if this will be the incorrect diagnosis because it's only 8 minutes into the show.
Right. You're like, no, they're going to be wrong because it's only this far in.
Yeah.
And like, there's going to be something that happens and there's going to be a B plot that doesn't matter and makes no difference. But then we tried Alton Brown's Good Eats, which feels like it should be because it's fairly slow cut. It focuses on recipes. It's often grounded with things you can get in the grocery store. Like that's kind of what it's built around. It's like
it's educational.
It's educational.
It's attainable.
Yeah,
but still a little aspirational.
Yeah, it's like the same where he's saying like, oh, okay, you need your like stainless steel pan and your Dutch oven. It's like, okay, I can obtain these things. I might not have them, but like I can obtain them.
But probably.
Yeah, like there's not very many crazy ingredients, things you wouldn't find. I mean, one episode we'd watched on, like Jen and I had watched on garlic, like he was in a Kroger, a King Soopers, basically.
Right.
Yeah, he also went to Bed Bath and Beyond and was
went
like
to Bed Bath and Beyond and been like, also, you don't need this thing.
Yeah, he was actually saying like, don't buy this and don't buy that. This is like something you don't need.
I see.
He's kind of,
I could see that being, I'm with you. If I was trying to get her into a food show and then based on this sort of, okay, we tried here, then we tried here, what's in the middle a little bit?
Well, I think it was more saying here were kind of the combinations of objections, something that was like not too Guy Fieri of you're getting into the junk. I think she also was turned off by the junk foodiness of the Guy Fieri show we watched. Like
they're making like queso and then using like potato chips to like eat the queso.
Oh, yes, she did mention this on Christmas. And she was like, that's insane. Like, who would eat queso with like a potato chip? And I was like, I would do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I would do it with a Dorito. Like, that sounds amazing.
It's part of what it, and so it's like, that didn't fit for her.
Well,
and then,
you need to have a certain, you need to be somebody, I think, to watch Guy Fieri who either just is watching it, or someone who can appreciate like dumping a garbage can of nachos onto the table.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? All right, Guy Fieri, like, I'm with you. I'm there.
It's that you have to be in for the sort of trashy experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then like Iron Chef was like, okay, this is probably too intense, like too fast cut, and also maybe like too stratospheric high level. Like,
I think she wasn't into the campiness either. I think it was.
yeah, I think it was she took it too seriously.
I see. Yeah, because it does. If you took it seriously, Iron Chef is like watching a Michael Bay movie or something, right? Where there's like all these shots and lens flares, and there's just a lot going on, and you're like, how did you put this much into 1 2-minute sequence of this? Like, this doesn't even make sense.
Well, it feels like a lot of people's
Chrome everywhere.
Early encounters with Iron Chef, right, was like the idea of this is kind of ridiculous and absurd.
Yeah,
And when you took it sincerely, you were never going to like it.
Right.
So you had to have that sort of ironic detachment from it.
Which I think you have to have with Guy Fieri, too, right? You have to sort of be like, I think he kind of knows that he's a ridiculous character. You know, I think he knows that driving in this convertible with his frosted hair in like the 2020s is like,
it's like
pretty stupid.
A little bit of a clown.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, which also in Guy Fieri as a personality was a way for him to stick out among the like Anthony Bourdains, Gordon Ramsays, and Alton Browns, even to be like, because they are like very. Alton Brown can be a little bit more goofy, but they're like serious and aggressive in a way that like Guy Fieri is not.
Well, and you could like sort of picture it like, you know what? There's a guy who works at Waffle House that looks just like him. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of more his persona.
But we kind of, you know, and then like Cook kind of is a guy who doesn't really cook.
Yeah.
You know, it has a helper to like, you know, the first season is like, I can't cook at all.
Yeah.
Second season is like, I can kind of cook, but, you know, it doesn't really work out. So, but something was a little bit, picked it mostly because it's so much slower paced. Like it was like a new show that's kind of more pastoral in its time. It's not doing a lot of crazy jump cuts.
It's lo-fi, as the kids would say.
Yeah. And that made it easier. It's very lo-fi in the way that it's showing you also that like here's the crew. Like you can see the crew, the producers.
We're not pretending like this is just happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they're sort of, it's showing you all the strings in a way. And you know, she liked that based on personality, but just didn't fit. So a lot of trying to pick Alton Brown was trying to deal with all of the like, okay, this is what you said you don't like and what you're looking for. This is what you said you don't like and what you're looking for. Yeah. And I think Alton Brown, she kind of liked it and was polite about it in the way that someone has said, you have met all of my requirements, but somehow I'm still not satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's sort of I have to kind of figure out that maybe this is just not for me.
There's
but
just
also
a magic, you know, an X factor that's just not clicking here.
Okay.
When you're thinking about it in a food way, it's like someone has specified all the stuff you want, where maybe you say like, I want a thing that has a little bit of noodles, like it has noodles in it, has a little bit of sweetness.
But it's not Asian.
But it's not, you know, but it's not Asian. And someone
it's not Italian.
But then someone gives you that, right?
Yeah.
Someone gives you all of the things and you're like, I don't really like this, but at the same time, like they gave me all of the stuff I asked for.
It's like when I go to the make your own bowl place, the like Mongolian barbecue, and you make your own bowl, and I do it, and it kind of sucks. But I'm like, I mean,
yes,
I should have known. I guess I feel like I constructed something good, but it's kind of my own fault that this sucks.
That's why I don't like those places, because I'm just like, I mean, I know what I like, but also like I'm not very confident that it's going to be something I want to eat in the end.
I think that part of what's hard with those places, and it depends on the type of Mongolian place that you go to, is that you have to pick stuff that seems weird. Like you have to be, if something is too weird, you almost have to I almost find that I get better stuff when I gravitate towards stuff that's too weird.
Well, I think it's the thing is like I go and it seems like a great idea, but then I realize like there's a reason that people are chefs, and it's because they know things that would be interesting and delicious to eat.
Right.
Where I'm like, kind of on a guess and check mode here, and like I'll do my best, and it's not usually like horrific, but I'm just like, I could have made I can make my own shitty food.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
my own
right?
mediocre food is very attainable for me.
I can like guess what goes together at home. I don't need to like go out to guess what goes together.
I feel like a part of why I'm coming to you is I need you to help me,
Expert
chef
opinion.
or menu builder, to like build something that goes together, so that way I don't have to think about it.
Do you think the guys who work that flat top there, like they get the bowl and they dump it out and they can immediately tell like, oof, this is somebody made some bad choices here. This is gonna suck.
I think that there's a bit of someone can go in and tell like this person isn't gonna like it, but I've never been to one where if I came up with my mixture,
Yeah.
they're like, are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Well, okay, but you are good. So
Yeah.
like when we get pizza, I never pick the pizza.
Okay.
I always tell Ian like you pick the pizza because he picks like good combinations.
Yeah,
like I don't
okay.
I trust his ability to pick a good random combination of things way more than I trust my own ability. So I'm just like, no, I want you to do it for me
You
because
just
like
do it.
you're just more skilled at this. So Ian is like he's not challenged in the way that others are
Yeah.
with picking combinations.
Which is part of what I was saying before, is that sometimes the best way when you have to pick stuff is you pick stuff that you don't want to pick. Maybe you don't want to pick the weirdest thing, right? Be like, absolutely not. Like if you say, like if you go to the Mongolian place and you just say, I really hate tofu, right?
Sure.
You don't pick tofu. But if you're looking at the tofu and saying, I don't know, it's kind of weird, that might be the direction to go. Like that might be like where you're getting something a little bit, you want to like say, what is just outside of your realm? Like you have to go that 10% outside.
I just feel like when I go, it's not even like I don't get that deep on it. It's more like I'll either make something that's has a bunch of stuff in it and it's not good, or I'll
Right.
be like, you know what, this time I'm gonna go simple, and I'll be like, here's beef, here's broccoli, here's garlic.
Yeah.
This can't be bad. And it's not, but it's not like good.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, I think with those places, though, the secret probably is, or maybe not the secret, but one of the options is you have to just like almost put in as much stuff as you can get away with, like just as much like as many different things.
I think maybe I would like, if I were to go to one of those places again, I would want to just like entrust my fate to the person who does this. Because like you
Yeah.
said, like they see the bowls that don't work out and they see the bowls that do work out. So
Yeah.
I think I would just be like, I know you know what's good. So like, I want the chef special.
yeah. What would you make on your lunch
Yeah,
break?
yeah,
Just make me
yes.
that.
I want the thing you eat on
You
your
want the
lunch
chef's
break.
table, basically.
Yeah.
Like, you want
Yes.
the like, here's the thing. But that's also where the hard part, and this is also the challenge, is that whenever you get the chef's table, the chef is like, this is what you're getting, and you better like it.
Yeah.
And that's where the person usually gets to the chef's table, not just by paying, but also being willing to take the bold choices. So like you're the kind of person who doesn't just pick, okay, beef, broccoli, garlic is safe. You'd be like, you're the one who's picked like the most bizarre stuff. You're like, water chestnuts, and okay, these sprouts over here, and then corn, and then like you're all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, you
little
can like maybe give them a little guidance though, because sometimes sometimes they'll give you something safe because they're not sure what you can handle. So like maybe I'd be like, I want the chef's table. I like spicy. I like garlic. I like onion. Do something with that.
You want to mix the three sauces together. Like when they ask what sauce you want, you don't say, I want this one. You're like, mix this one with this one and this one.
I now am fascinated because I'm like, I need to get on Yelp and see how people review that type of restaurant.
yeah.
Because I'm like, I mean, if they're like, it wasn't very good, but it's like,
like,
oh,
well,
maybe that was your fault.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
It's where people need to have the self-awareness to be like, I kind of walked down this path.
yeah, right. And it's like, well, how do you review a restaurant? Like, you give it 3 stars because you're like, the food wasn't amazing, but I made all the choices.
Yeah.
Like,
It's when people give bad Yelp reviews when they get the fish and chips.
oh, yeah.
In a lot of places I go to where I'm like, well, you got the fish and chips, and I'm like, it's kind of your own fault.
Yeah.
Why is that? Wait, what would that? Why is fish and chips the exception?
I think it's because many places that serve fish and chips that I see people have in the Yelp review, a lot of like breweries will serve fish and chips, right? Because it's like a deep fried thing, but people have an expectation of like, this is going to be like hand battered, like fresh fish, sort of thing. And most of the time, like when people have fish and chips, you're like, this is the frozen thing that got shipped in.
Okay.
Because not very many people actually order fish and chips.
Right.
And so people have I'm expecting a high culinary standard, and then it doesn't come out that way.
I see. I feel like there are multiple mistakes on this road because it's like, well, if you're gonna have fucked up fish and chips, just don't have it on the menu. Like, no one's gonna be mad in America.
When the only fish thing on the menu is your fish and chips, that's a sign of what you're probably gonna get. It's either going to be excellent or like kind of frozen bad. There's no in between. And so people order something with an expectation of it being much better than it actually is.
Okay.
Like you're ordering the thing that's maybe to put it another way of like, what do you expect when you're going to you go to a steakhouse, they happen to have a pasta dish, right?
Yeah, and it's not so hot.
And it's not so hot. You're like, well, yeah, you ordered the thing that they're not good at.
Okay, I think like my equivalent to this is sometimes like I'll read a review of a hotel and they'll say something about like how the lobby didn't have very decadent furniture or something, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about that. You know
like
what I mean?
Right, yeah.
I haven't sat in the I don't think outside of a conference situation, I have never sat in the lobby furniture.
Really?
Yeah.
You never sit in hotel lobby for any reason?
I don't think so. Well, part of it is that most of the time, if I'm in a hotel, right, I'm traveling by myself, right? And if I could sit in the room, it's where I'm going to sit.
Yeah, but like, okay, you get there and they're like, okay, oh, you got here a little early. We'll have your room ready for you in 15 minutes. Can you take a seat?
Honestly, I can say that has very rarely, if ever, happened to me. Like most of the time.
Or someone's supposed to come pick you up and you get down there, but you're a couple of minutes early. Like,
again, that's also where like I might be sitting. Okay, that's where like I'm sitting there, but I'm not like thinking about it very much. So I'm spending like less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
In the
I think
space.
for me, it's like a hotel. I treat it like living at home when you're a teenager. I'm like, I'm going to my room. That's the only place where anyone understands me.
Right. It's the thing I would never review unless the furniture was extremely good or extremely bad.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm not even going to notice it. Like,
Yeah, if the lobby smelled really fucked up, that would probably be something I'd be a little concerned. Or you know what a good one is like you'll read a review of a hotel and they're like there was, they were doing road work outside at 7 a.m. or whatever. And you're like, I mean, this review is like 2 years old at this point. Like, you're going to assume they're done.
Yeah.
And also, the hotel has no control over that.
Yes.
So you're like, okay, yeah, if my mom's going there today, I'd be like, pick somewhere else. They're doing road work. But it doesn't really serve as a review of the hotel.
Yes, I agree with you that it can be strange to read a review where it's like not really a review of the thing. It's the review of like when you read a review and it's about like an Amazon review and it's about the shipping.
Yes.
And it's like only
Fast
about the shipping.
Item intact. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, well, all right.
people are reviewing their overall experience and not necessarily like what this thing provides.
Yeah.
And that's also where sometimes, when you get to something like hotels and restaurants, like some places sell you food or a place to sleep.
Sure.
And other places, like they have come to our experience. And that's where people, at least are valid in reviewing an overall thing. Like if you're buying a luxury hotel experience and there's a whole bunch of road work going on, the hotel doesn't control it, but at the same time, you're not getting what you were sold either. Right?
Well, yeah, I just, it's a parallel. Okay.
Right.
So you're watching Alton Brown.
Yes.
And then what was the Alton Brown episode that threw the train off the tracks?
So there's a bit where, like, for those people who don't watch A Good Eats, there's sometimes like little skits here and there.
Oh,
like
yeah.
little, like,
Okay.
and they're often like pretty short, like one-off jokes, or like, you know, maybe like a couple callback jokes sort of things. Like in the episode on molasses, he makes a old-fashioned pie called a shoe fly pie. And there can be something like, oh, you know, this is supposed to be so good the flies can't stay away from it. And there's like one of the crew or someone behind him has got a little fly mask and is like trying to get in.
Sure.
That will pop up again. So that's kind of like, that winds up being like a minute or so in a 22-minute show. So
He goes a little like, Pee-wee's Playhouse for just a minute.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
You have the little zany joke here and there, which in a cooking show, like, okay, it spices it up a little bit.
Sure. Gives it a little something, yeah.
But this one was about pies, specifically like mincemeat pies, what it's sold as. And this felt like they were doing their own version of Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, they really did.
They really did, like,
they did their own version of Sweeney Todd.
Does that have
yeah.
something to do with mincemeat pie? I'm not familiar with Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney
at all.
Todd's basic premise is that there's a murder. It's in London. There's a murdering barber
Yeah.
who murders people in the barber shop, and then their bodies go down to the pie shop next door to be turned into meat pies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's like shaving them, right? And then he just like slits their throat while he's like got the razor over them. And then I think he has like a little chute or something, so he can just like
okay.
tip the barber chair
into
up,
the chute, and then
and
it
it
goes
just
down.
they just slide down.
Just slide down
To the pie shop.
into the grinder to then get ground up into meat for
Gotcha. Okay.
for sausage.
So
And,
that's why a mincemeat pie episode has a Sweeney Todd.
yeah, like if
okay.
you're having something about pies,
I'm
this would
probably
be-
the only person who needed that explanation, but thank you.
Well, watching the show, I realized, like, if you were not familiar with Sweeney Todd, like, none of this would make any sense.
You'd be like, what the hell is going on?
What the
Yeah,
hell
it
is
probably would
going
be
on?
weird.
And so this was around that, like, this episode, roughly a year came out at the same time that Sweeney Todd was popular.
Okay. Alton Brown also, to me, feels a little bit, he's got a little bit of that, like, theater kid to
Yeah.
him. So, yeah.
That's also what I would probably say is the energy of Good Eats, is like theater kid energy.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know what? 22 minutes of it, when it's a little restrained, there's someone to tell you, like, there's a low, but like when you have a limited budget, too, to be like,
It does seem like, especially at first, it was a very cheap show.
Right.
Not anyone's fault, just like,
it was a low budget show.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the budget we have. We're
Yep.
not spending money on this. And like
right.
But the
We're
Sweeney
not buying you a convertible to drive around.
Right.
in,
the
sir.
Sweeney Todd thing was spending a lot on like extra actors and costumes
Oh, okay.
and like, you know,
Yep.
dressing up the set a little bit. So I was like, okay, they got some money and tried to do something a little more theatrical. And I think that is
Okay.
where it lost our mom a little bit.
Yeah, she was not having it. She was not having it.
She's not interested in the theatrical side of the cooking show.
No.
No, I mean, I think the premise was like it started with him, and he was like, I have this like book of recipes passed down from my great grandfather who was, you know, in London at one point before he came to America. And so then, you know, we sort of are transported to the
Okay.
pie shop in London where he wanders in, and I guess he's a cook, and so he knows what he's doing. And the woman making pies is making horrible pies, and so she's like, will you please like stay and teach me how to cook? And as he's teaching her how to cook, this whole Sweeney Todd thing is happening
I see.
around him, where
I
he's
see.
like, what kind of meat is this? And she's like, what kind of meat do you want it to be?
Right.
So he's like playing the sort of unaware idiot.
Yes.
But he does know about pie making.
Yes.
So that's how you. That's the sort of coat rack you hang the shit
Yes.
on. Okay. Gotcha.
But he's trying to help her improve her pies.
Yes.
And our mom was like, you don't need to whore this up with all this, you know,
Exactly.
London back in the 1800s nonsense.
Which is probably also, in fairness, there was a big leap from one of the earlier episodes we watched that night, which was like, here's the best way to clean and organize your freezer.
Okay.
Which was extremely
So
grounded.
practical.
Like, so,
Yes.
like, this is how your freezer, you know, he had a like diagram of this is how your freezer works. This is where to put stuff in your freezer. This is what to do with your freezer.
Here's the office supply equipment you should use to like.
Okay.
He had like stakes inside of like a mail sorter. Like he had like
Okay.
inserted
Like
the steak.
Okay.
He had like inserted the steaks into this like
Yeah.
into this mail
see.
sorter so they could be like in different places. And so like you had all these mail sorter
Okay.
things to like, well, like put in little
I get it.
like little
Yeah.
shelves in the
It's a weird
freezer.
idea.
Yeah, he was like organize your freezer so that you can like easily access things because he was like most people treat their freezer like a garbage can, but you can like organize your freezer so that you can just easily pull out like a shelf or something to get
see.
to
It's
the
a
thing you're
very good home economics thing of like where he's trying to help people like maximize their freezer by saying like put stuff here. This is where it will freeze the fastest. And then once it's done, you kind of
okay.
move it to another spot. And then like
Make your
yes.
freezer more useful.
right.
But yes, painfully like utilitarian.
Like
Okay.
painfully detailed. Exactly. It was it was educational to the point of pain. Where like
Yes.
he's walking through how your freezer works, and it's
I
like
see.
I don't care.
Do you think like okay, her low tolerance for the nonsense part? I mean, she raised 2 sons, you know, who engaged in their
A lot of nonsense.
lot of nonsense.
yeah, and like, and you know, even as we got older, there were things that you have to do as a parent, like you have to go to the
play.
the plays, the band concerts, you know, and you have to hear Ian's band concert, and then a year later hear my band concert, and we play the exact same songs, just as shitty. And like, I remember watching, you know, they used to show like the middle school band concerts on like the public access channel. And like, I don't know, 10, 15 years after I'd finished middle school, I'm watching a band concert and they're playing the same songs and it sounds so bad. And I was like, my first thought was like, wow, what happened? The kids have gotten so bad at this. And I was like, I bet we sounded exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, I bet they don't even change. You could just have someone at the public access station just use the same audio track every time. Because I guarantee you it sounds exactly the same.
I wonder how much in the public access, like you could show something from maybe not like 15 or 20 years ago, but like from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the only people who would know are people who are looking for their kid.
It's 2:34.
234. But this is what we're getting to since we're talking about food. We're going to turn this podcast. We need to, you know, because every time I come, I'm trying to get like you to hit the algorithm differently, right?
And you have a better plan
I
than
have
my
a plan.
plan of using terrible pejorative terms.
I have a plan this time, right? This will get us on here, right? Is that this is going to be a food show, and you're going to try some food,
Oh,
and we're going to see
okay.
how it goes. And I'm going to go prepare this food.
Okay.
And I'll be right back.
Okay, so
Wait, so you're actually gonna go make some food right now?
well, he
right.
got us.
Whoa.
I don't know where it came from, but he got a cup noodles, and it's like a
Oh yeah.
chocolate
Yes,
dessert noodles.
I saw it in the pantry. Is that what you think he's gonna?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because that was a gift from him.
Yeah.
And he got so what this appears
Okay.
to be is like your cup noodles, but instead of chicken or shrimp flavor, it's I don't know what it's called, chocolate.
I think it's what do you call it? The thing you like toast over the fire.
Oh, s'mores.
Yeah, I think it's like s'mores flavored. And when I saw it in the pantry or in the cabinet, I was just like,
That's why we have it. And then, yeah, so my suspicion is what we're about
he's
to have.
about
is,
to go heat up some water.
Yes.
Okay, that would make sense because in my head I was like, I don't remember bringing any groceries here. Does he know what's in your refrigerator? Like, is he just going to improvise something?
gonna
Like
run
all
down.
three of those, like all those options went through my head, like just in succession. Like, what is about to happen here?
Yeah. It's like, okay, we're going to do our own version of Guy's Grocery Games, but in your kitchen or something.
Basically, yeah.
I'm suspicious that what this is going to be is cup noodles with hot chocolate powder in them. That's what I'm suspicious this is
I
gonna
don't know. My stomach's getting a little weak already, though, to be honest. Like, it's funny. Like, as I get older, my stomach gets like weaker.
Oh, yeah.
Like just gross stuff just grosses me out
be. Yeah.
more. I don't know why, because I was telling Ian last night, like, I feel like as I get older, I should be getting more inured to like
Right.
life, you know,
Right.
like I've seen it all. Like you can't shock me.
Right.
But I don't know. Somehow my stomach, maybe it's that my stomach is getting, or like my brain or whatever is getting like worn down by life, you know, instead. And so I'm just like not able to tolerate as much. But yeah, the idea of this is actually making me slightly, just the idea is making me slightly nauseous.
Of the food. Yeah, it is funny like that. Like, I talk to Poodmaster about this all the time because we have this joke in our house that, like, inability to eat lots of sweets or candy is like weakness. You know, it's like, she's very strong. And I'm like, I'm not as strong as you. I can't eat a cookie for breakfast. You know, that's not going to work. It does seem like the older I get, the less able I am to eat. It's not like just necessarily weird stuff, but like I couldn't eat like a whole sleeve of Oreos. You know what I mean? Like I could not do it today.
Okay.
Or like, you know, we famously as kids had like a 4 soda per day limit.
Yes.
And it was like, at the time when we were kids, it was like, this is outrageously low. But as an adult, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think if I drank 4 sodas in a day, I'd be like, what happened?
I know.
You
I still haven't done 4 soda club because like,
it's okay. It's a lot.
yeah, it is a lot. But yeah, I used to eat in high school. Sometimes for lunch, I would buy like a roll of Starburst like early in the day. And so for lunch, I would have like fries from the cafeteria and maybe like half a sleeve of Starburst. And now when I think about doing that, I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I had like this is a few months ago. It may have been something else, but I had like a 20-ounce soda, and it was like I had the flu. Like I had it like in the
You
evening.
had like a sugar like
yeah.
coma or something.
Yeah, I was like, I don't feel so good, and like I had to go to bed early. Like it just put me into bed because it was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
Your body cannot handle this. And it just seems like that aspect of, you know, yeah, like emotionally, mentally, I feel less surprised by things. But physically, it's almost like as you age, your body forgets like the variety or something. And it's like, oh, I don't think we'll be doing that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just not in the habit of, I mean, I guess I could get in the habit of eating that, but why?
Yeah, I know.
Why?
The benefits start and stop at being able to do it.
Right.
You know, that's the only real benefit of, like, yeah, drinking 4 sodas a day is like, well, I guess if for some reason you wanted to drink 4 sodas a day, that's the way to do it. But I don't recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the idea of I guess hot chocolate noodles, it just seems like a carb bomb.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, like the last time I even had hot chocolate, it was, you know, just like a Swiss Miss or something. I drank a third of it and was like, it's too sweet.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, I can't take it. And I just dumped it out. And I was like, well, there goes, I guess, a, you know, beloved Christmas treat. You know, that's gone.
Well, so I do sometimes still have hot chocolate, but yeah, Swiss Miss is not my favored one. I'll get oh gosh, there's another one, Land O'Lakes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they put out like a little holiday sampler or whatever with all different kinds of like hot chocolate. I didn't get it this year, but it's been my thing for a long time because I like the mint hot chocolate, but they also have like, I don't know, hazelnut, caramel, just like everything.
Yeah.
And those ones are like a little more, I don't know, I find the flavors are a little more sophisticated, I guess. But even still, I don't mix it the way they say to mix it. I mix it weaker than they say to mix it.
Yeah, I think if I had done half the packet, that probably...
Yeah.
It sucks. It feels like you're just headed towards this future where you're like, you know, the meal that you would like to eat, you're like, here's a nice little bit of sauerkraut that I like, you know, just like the most disgusting shit because it's like just not sweet, I guess.
It's like some sort of bland menu or something.
Yeah, or like I find myself, it's like, what I like with a cup of coffee is a nice little bag of potato chips. And it's like, what the hell? Like, that's like what an old man would
Yeah.
eat. That would be like you discover your grandpa's been eating that for breakfast for the last 2 years. And you're like, okay, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
that works for you. But I don't know. It does seem that it's like part of the weakening of aging.
Yeah. Ian is into the, like, I guess what we refer to as like old person donut options.
Yeah.
Like the old fashioned.
Yeah. Like a nice sour cream old fashioned that, just tastes like donut, I guess. Unfrosted.
Yes. Yeah. I actually was accused of liking old person donuts by some children once.
Oh, okay.
This was
In the donut shop?
No, this was I guess this would have been 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like volunteering. It was when I was in New Jersey. I was volunteering to like tutor kids on like Saturday mornings, and someone would bring donuts sometimes, but I decided to bring some donuts one morning. Yeah, the kids they ragged on me.
Do you remember what kind of donut it was that?
It wasn't an old fashioned, but I think it was just like it was some kind of cake donut.
Yeah.
I think like maybe like either like plain cake or maybe chocolate cake, but yeah, it was definitely a cake donut.
That's the first step down that path, I think, is the switch from the raised to cake.
Yes.
Because when you're a kid, you like that doughy raised thing, and then you're like, oh, actually, I like the density of this cake, and it's like something about the dryness of it that I enjoy. And then it's like, all right.
Yeah, that is the first step toward unfrosted old fashioned.
I think the one donut thing that I still have in my favor is like, I don't think I'll ever eat the blueberry, it's like a cake blueberry donut that just sort of has a light glaze, and I'm just
blueberry cake. Yeah, I'm not into the blueberry cake either. Yeah,
it's one of those like poor like Depression era donut feelings.
Yeah,
like in the way the old fashioned is, but that stuck around.
Okay, I can already smell this.
Yes.
And it smells.
All right, so it is the cup noodles campfire s'mores.
Campfire s'mores.
Noodles and sauce.
So
it's natural and, believe it or not, artificial flavors.
Yes, some natural and artificial flavors. So, for context,
I feel like we're gonna need a little photo of these.
Here, I'll take that. Do you want to go grab my telephone? It's near the door, on the thing near the door. Oh no, it's on the floor. I'm sorry. Turn around.
Oh, there.
And then, yeah. I make a really wise decision to plug my phone in so it's resting on the floor, so that I guess eventually I can destroy it by stepping on it. Oh my god, okay.
You're like stumbling around at night and you're just gonna crush your phone with your weight.
Gonna have a little visual for the episode thumbnail or something.
It looks much worse when you see the inside.
Now, I opened it up on the inside to put in some water, and I was going to like do it the more classy way of like have the kettle and you pour the water into it. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I ain't got time for that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so did you just throw the whole thing in the microwave?
I cooked it according to the directions.
Is that what it says?
Yes. Now, it had a little bit of a problem because it kind of like erupted out.
Oh.
And so I did clean off a little, I kind of at least scrubbed off or cleaned off the little glass thing that was in there.
Great, okay.
Now, when I opened it up, though, it did have marshmallows in it.
Yeah, where are the marshmallows?
And so the marshmallows seemed to have like melted or dissolved.
Okay, so
so they didn't erupt out, they're just gone.
So there's no option to not eat the marshmallows. They are infused.
I think it's, just kind of giving you the overall s'more flavor, but you're not going to have the s'more
infused. Oh my god.
So I'm just looking, just to see if I can locate. So it does look like, it looks like ramen noodles in hot chocolate.
Actually.
Yeah, it's what it's kind of smelled like in cooking. It smelled like
broth.
hot.
I could imagine that's beef broth and not like and not what it is.
If you couldn't smell it.
To imagine. Okay, so So this is our food show.
This is our food show.
It's gonna hack the algorithm.
Right, because somehow like the algorithms of various social media platforms are either people like occasionally people making amazing things, but it's usually the things that are very popular, or if you make something that's completely disgusting.
That is true,
okay.
actually. You could go viral here.
This could be our moment.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing of like where people make the most bizarre, cursed things.
So should I set up like a video for this? Is that
Maybe.
how this works?
I think, nothing says good audio like eating noodles on a microphone.
That's true.
I know of all the foods that I could think that I wouldn't want to hear someone eat would be like traditional noodle eating style.
Yeah, like it's just.
So I noticed you brought 3 forks.
Well,
Does that imply we're all gonna?
I wanted the opportunity for everyone to try it without having to share a fork.
Okay. Does everyone want the opportunity? Does everyone want to take a?
I feel like since I brought this, I probably am obliged to at least give it a shot.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just supervise.
I think that's good.
Jen has decided no.
Do you think should you go first or should I go first?
I feel like
How
you
does
should
that
go
work?
first.
Okay. I'm going to try and like spaghetti some of this up, even though I know that's not the ramen style. Mm-hmm. Just because.
I mean, I don't know that you need to worry about being, authentica in this.
In this context, because no one can see.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, who ruined the authenticity here? Me by eating it this way, or them by creating this?
Yeah, I think once you're in the campfire s'mores ramen, you're away. You've gone far away from anything authentic. And now Peter's chewing.
It's not as horrific as I thought. I don't know. I hesitate to call it good. It's weird. It's like my brain is tricked right now because it's expecting this to be salty, but it's not salty. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's strange.
There's like it's odd.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna just do the easier thing and just sort
it's
of
not good.
pull away from the microphone.
It's not good. It's not something that it would be hard to eat the whole thing. I think. I think.
Yeah, it's like 400 calories. I'm like, that's. I don't know if I could consume 400 calories of campfire
neither.
s'more.
Trying to aim this
Yeah, you got it.
grandpa style. So thoughtful.
Trying to decide if you like it.
Yeah, I mean it.
I'm gonna try to find a place that I can put this
I'll take
down.
it from you.
Now, it's not revolting, right?
Yeah, it's not like fucked up tasting. It's not where I'm like, I'm not mad at you for bringing it.
It's
But
like
it's not good. But
no, it's not. I mean, and this is where I'm trying to think it through. Like, is it not good because the idea is not good? Like, is it bad in concept?
I don't like the smell.
it does smell bad. It
Well,
smells worse than it tastes, I think.
Maybe to think of my sort of binging with Babish way of like where you could have like the high class version of it. That's where I'm getting at. Like, is this just a bad idea, or is it because it's kind of like it's a cup of noodles?
I don't like the idea. I don't like the smell.
There's nothing about
Jen
it.
is like, this is out in concept and execution.
I think the thing is like, perhaps I'm sure there's a good version of dessert noodles in the world. Like if you made a chocolate noodle somehow or something, and you had it with like melty vanilla ice cream, or you know what I mean, something. There's probably someone could
Like
do
there
it.
is like dessert couscous, for example, and couscous is like a pasta.
Yeah.
And so like there is that kind of thing where it's like a lot of cinnamon and sugar, and then like it's kind of just a delivery
If it
vehicle
was
for like
good, people would be doing it.
people do it. It's just like this is one of those like American things of like we don't want savory and sweet together at all. Like everything's got to be super sweet.
Well, this cup noodle feels something to me like somebody invented this at some point,
Right.
and then cup noodle got hip to it, and they were like, I mean, actually, this would be pretty easy for us to.
I mean, I see on the cup there, it's limited edition.
Yeah.
So they weren't willing to make a long-term bet on it.
What I think about is like I think part of what I don't like about it is that it's like bad hot chocolate.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is like I can conceive of a version of this that's probably better, you know, and I'm like, maybe it has little graham cracker crumbles in it, and maybe it has like marshmallow infused noodle instead of just floating. It's something like, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's possible from the Cup Noodle Company.
Yes, I think that's that's where I get at. It's not the problem of concept; it's the problem of execution, where it's like, the Cup Noodle Company. Also, maybe this is just for me. I fundamentally like hot chocolate a lot more when it's in like some type of milk or creamy thing, and not in water. So like that's just kind of a no for me.
I'm not convinced.
I just think it's like it's something that's possible to make good, but not for the Cup Noodle Company, so they never should have done it. And it's probably a limited edition, because my guess is you buy it, you try it, and then you don't buy it again. Like, why would you?
It could be a thing that, like, the Cup Noodle Company wants to test out, like, will people buy this?
Yeah.
And if it winds up being a massive hit, then it sort of, like, is around forever. But they make just enough of it and to try to sell it to be like, better buy it now.
Well, and it's like the Cup Noodle Company. It's like, I get what you're doing, and it's like, it's a comfort food in some ways. But, you know, when you open it up and you get, like, the shrimp flavor, it's got the most fucked up little tiny shrimp in there, and it's just like, it's not going to be that good. I mean, I don't know. You'd almost prefer that the shrimp dissolve like these marshmallows.
Yeah,
just
right.
to be
It's
like,
not there.
Yeah, it just vanishes.
I mean, it's the kind of thing, like, if your first encounter with, like, shrimp was a shrimp cup of noodles, you'd be like, this is a terrible thing and I hate shrimp.
Yeah.
But the reality is probably more like, no, you just hate what cup of noodles is doing to it.
Well, and it's weird because, like, cup noodles is sort of like, the flavoring of it is weird. It's almost like if you just made, like, a kind of a boring bouillon and then noodles were in it, I feel like that would be better than whatever.
I used to eat a lot of, like, instant noodles, and, like, I never liked cup noodles for some reason. Like, I always thought Marchand was, like,
Yeah.
the superior,
The packets
like,
instead of the cup.
yeah, I always thought that was the superior product, and so, like, I just didn't eat cup noodles.
I think cup noodles, that's their big thing, is the cup, right? It's like, you don't have to have anything. You could make this work with tap water.
I used to eat the Marchand noodles raw.
Oh, just
it was
dry?
like a cool thing. It sounds so bizarre now that I say it, but like in middle school, in 6th grade, I think it was. I think I remember doing it. It was like the cool thing to like eat packets of noodles raw. Like you'd put the powder in and then like kind of close it and then like shake it up so the powder would get distributed and then eat it kind of like chips.
Okay.
And it was like cool.
It's like a little snack.
All the cool kids were like eating raw instant noodles in this manner.
I think I had one friend who did that, and he would do that, but he ate like 3 packages of noodles and got kind of sick.
Because they expanded.
Because they expanded a bit. Yeah, and it was like, okay, because...
I feel like this is like somebody needs to write like a revised version of Lord of the Flies, where it's like a bunch of middle schoolers get trapped on an island, but then they just start doing dumb shit, you know? They just like, the trend becomes like finding seashells or something, and then they all get really into it, and it makes no sense, you know? And it's just like, I mean, that's probably what would happen. They might spear each other to death, but they might just like come up with some stupid ass thing.
Yeah, like weird, cool stuff.
Yeah. They're like searching for beach glass or something, and you know, whoever finds the best beach glass wins, or you know what I mean? Or they come up with some really stupid game with a tennis ball that washes up on shore and it becomes all the rage.
They're more dumb than evil. And it's like, if left to their own devices, they just do dumb stuff.
Yeah, I think they would more likely just come up with some weird hierarchy based on like a really stupid game, or like who could draw the best race car or something in the sand. Like
they have like survival supplies, and it's not what will keep them alive the longest. It's like they'll make the grossest combination of stuff.
Yeah, like when we were in school, I remember there was this trend this very briefly lived trend where they had a school store and they sold erasers, and it was just a plain black eraser, but it was shaped like a dog tag, and it came on the dog tag style chain.
Oh, wow.
And that was like the biggest thing. Like, you had to get one. You know what I
Really?
mean? Yeah, and it was like kids would even get the dog's tag style chain even if they couldn't get the eraser, and you would just wear that and then put it under your shirt. So it's like, well, people will think I have an eraser. You know what and I don't know who came up with that eraser and like why and like what they thought. They must have just been like, I don't know, man. It's a school supply, I guess.
Someone just is like, how can we sell more erasers to kids? And
Yeah.
It's like, what if we make it look like badass to have an eraser?
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those huge successes in terms of this costs 4 cents to make and we sell it for $1 and we cannot keep them in stock.
I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense to me as a cool way to, or as a way to like sell stuff to kids, but like, I guess the part that's not computing in my brain is like, you know, in recent years, the idea of stolen valor has
sure.
become like this huge like thing. And like, you know, anytime anyone wears anything vaguely military, they kind of have to ask themselves like, you know, like if I wear this old like jacket, you know, like
Yeah.
I found at a
If I
thrift
wear
store.
if I wear this old military jacket,
Yeah,
it's going to be like a stolen valor.
Right. Am I going to be challenged in a mall by some
Right.
guy or something, right? And so, like, this eraser thing in my head, I'm just like, well, I guess no one was worried about stolen valor
Yeah.
yet, because if people are just, like, wearing dog tags, like, for fun.
It was at that time especially, it was like if someone was walking around in a green canvas jacket, it was more likely they were in a grunge band than they were
Right.
in Vietnam.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true. Yeah.
They were buying something from the military surplus store to either look cool or because it was what they could afford.
yeah, and I think there was also, because when we were kids, like G.I. Joe was a huge thing. And so it was like you would dress in a G.I. Joe thing or
Okay, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
dress up like in camo for Halloween or whatever. And it didn't have quite the same implication because also that was vaguely peacetime. So, you know, if you dressed up like in camo, it wasn't like doing it even 10 years later where it's like, well, okay, the implication is that you're shooting people in Afghanistan. Or
Right, yeah.
20 years earlier where it's like you're killing people in Vietnam. It's like, yeah, you maybe did a 2-day Desert Storm thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
See, it seemed fine. There was like Desert Storm trading cards and stuff.
Well, I think but with the s'mores, this 2024 is among the many years where there's like people, like big food companies trying to do odd things like
Yeah.
the Coke Oreos or the Oreo Coke.
That's true.
where this cup of noodles lasted longer than the Coke Oreos did. Where those got discontinued in like a few days.
A few days.
People thought they were just super gross.
Oh, okay.
Like they would eat them and be like, these are gross.
But see, that's almost better to me. Like something super gross to me is more interesting than something that's mildly gross. You know, like I don't know.
Like this was mildly gross, and that's part of where it just doesn't have the same thing as being absolutely revolting.
Well, it makes me think it's a marketing idea to make something gross because like, okay, you know, there's like a thing on social media, right? Like if I'm putting out a video about something and I want to get more engagement, I will mispronounce a word on purpose or like misspell something in the caption on purpose because then a bunch of people jump in the comments and are like correcting it. But then that's just seen as engagement, right? So
Right.
it drives up the engagement of my otherwise nothing content. And I wonder if like that's what companies are doing right now is they're like, you know, there is something if we put a little bit into making something that sucks, but then everybody's talking about Coke Oreos, right? And then like I guess they're talking about those two brands, or I don't know.
I think it's that you're probably right in that if like something like Oreos is fine, right? It's average. Like people like Oreos. There's a handful of people who love Oreos. There's a handful of people who hate Oreos, but it's like it's just kind of mid. It's 3 stars cookies.
Sure.
Like they're not bad, but they're not like you're not going to go out of your way to get them.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to talk about on the internet, right? It's stuff that's like okay, like
Well, even stuff that's good, I think, is hard to talk about. Like, it's hard to.
it's easy to talk about something that is amazing, like this is the best thing ever, or people will talk about it in terms like this is a 5-star amazing changed my life thing, or this is a 1-star garbage.
Okay, I'm going to disagree and say I think it's easy to talk about something that's amazing if it's unattainable for the average person. So like if you do a video of you flying on United Arab Emirates and you're in the tippy top class and you're in the lay down seat or whatever, I think that works. And to talk about how amazing that is. But to talk about like a new album coming out and saying it's amazing, no one gives a shit. You know what I mean? No one's like, oh, okay, wow, big deal. You know what I mean? And like, you get a lot more traction from hating something, or if something is genuinely terrible, it's more interesting.
Right.
I think than, yeah, you're right. It's more interesting than something average is something terrible. But like, I don't know. There's something too about this s'mores thing, because it's like you can kind of like intellectually understand the concept of what this is. Like I can picture the assembly line, and it's just like instead of shooting out a yellow dust, it's shooting out brown dust. You know what I mean? And it's like the same thing. And I could kind of guess what it would taste like, and I think was kind of right about what it would taste like.
Like it kind of tastes like hot chocolate.
Yeah. But it just, yeah, it almost seems like, because I would never talk about cup noodles on this show. Like, why would I? You know what I mean? But then we just spent 10 minutes talking about cup noodles.
Cup noodles. I do think it also has that cup noodles chemically taste that
Oh, for sure.
I always expect.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of what makes it a little bad. Is
Part of the brand.
Yeah, it's like it has that chemical, it's off. So I would say it's not good. Now, the other question is, who is this for?
I think it's for basically what we just did.
Right.
I think that's what it's for.
Children?
No, like for...
I mean, like, it could be for children?
It's for getting engagement on the internet.
You think it's only for getting engagement?
I think you set up your phone and you and your friends try it, you know, on camera, and like hopefully one of you has a big reaction to it. And then...
It is the thing that worked on me, because I saw this in the store. I thought, that's gross.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy this for Peter.
Where did you get I was wondering, where did you get it?
Walmart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I just think it seems like a product for me that fits perfectly in that niche of like, let's just get it. Let's see what happens. You know what I mean? You sell it around Christmas time too, because people are thinking hot chocolate. I think a kid would probably eat this.
Well, I bought this in the summer.
Oh, okay.
But that's why it's like campfire, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that when you were talking about when Jim was talking about the calories, I think about the people who still eat like, not just like cup of noodle brand noodles, but those sort of like cups of noodles. It's mostly people I know who do a lot of hiking and camping.
Right.
Where I kind of see where this is kind of going, like hikers and campers like this. Maybe they'll like a s'mores version.
Ooh, boy.
But I'm like, that seems like a bad idea, because like if I'm camping or hiking, I want stuff that I know is going to be good, because I'm like, this is the food I've got.
Yeah, if you were out camping and you brought food.
Oh my God. And you had to eat it?
That's all you had.
All the calories you have?
Like camping, even just going on regular hikes,
Oh my
I don't
God.
experiment with new food. I'm like, I'm going to say, I want this to be my, because like I don't have any other choice.
You know what this really should be? This would be, if I was in marketing there, my next step. I'd be like, we're going to turn this into the icing of the camping world. So like if, you know, when you have what do you call those drinks? Smirnoff Ice.
Right.
And you play the icing game, which is like you hide a Smirnoff Ice somewhere, and if someone finds it, they have to drink it. You know, and that's like it's like a fratty thing, or like a golf thing. Like you put it in the cup holder in someone else's golf cart, and if they see it, then they have to drink it. I would turn this into the camping version of that, where it's like the prank becomes you put it in someone else's bag, and then if they find it, they have to eat it. You know what I mean? Or if you're like, oh yeah, that's over in my bag over there, go find it, and then they find this instead, and it's like, oh, now you got to eat it.
It's like if someone finds it and they get spotted finding it, but if you're able to, like, if you discover it in your bag and no one has seen you, you can put it in someone else's bag.
Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah, I could see that as a viral marketing thing.
Yeah, it kind of becomes a prank.
It's like a little bit of a prank.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would... Now, here's the other... Maybe it was a way of wrapping this up. Would you include this in a Santa Rampage challenge? Not would you. How would you include this in a Santa Rampage challenge?
The difficult part is getting like hot water
Yeah.
so that it can be eaten. You know what I would probably do is make it part of a sort of scavenger hunt. And one of the activities is you have to consume this whole thing. And I'll just leave it to everybody else to figure out how you could eat it dry. You could find hot water. I
guess if you like went to a restaurant, you could like maybe be like, hey, can you just give me some hot water from your like coffee machine? Because like every coffee machine has a little spigot for hot water. Maybe
the answer is to go to that beer bar, the fancy one that has the beers at different temperatures, and find a warm beer. And then you have to fill this with the warm beer, and that softens the noodles, and then eat it. Maybe that's the answer.
That sounds revolting.
Yeah, it does sound bad.
I think it's like, if you have the Santa Rampage where you have like the bingo card year, like this would just be on the bingo card.
Yeah, this would be an activity, and so it's like
cup noodle beer.
Yeah.
Or if like you had the years where you had like a spin the wheel for a drink type of thing. I think that was at the golf.
Yeah, okay.
Like one of the golf ones where it's like you could spin the wheel and you get like a Malort or you get this, but you get like the cup of noodle, which is not as gross as some of the things that are on there. But like, I mean, if I had the choice between the pickle brine and the cup of noodles, I'm probably gonna take the cup of noodles.
I could see. Okay, so usually, like you have done challenges in the past, like before we leave, like while we're doing the little pre-party.
Yep.
So maybe you could get it into a pre-party while there's still hot water available.
You know, I'm thinking now too, like, I wonder, like, maybe not the chocolate one,
right?
But like a regular cup noodle made with warm beer. I'm wondering what that would be, because maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Maybe it would be.
Hot beer is pretty rough.
Yeah, but maybe
like hot enough to to melt the noodles. But that, you know what? That is a future thing to try on a future episode.
There you go. And we want to go super viral.
Exactly.
Hot beer, cup of noodle. Cup of beardle.
Yes.
Something like that. Some kind of name. All right. Well, thank you for coming. I guess thank you for bringing this. I have mixed feelings about thanking you for that, but
I'm sorry, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome for content.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everything. I need content.
Content for the content god.
We'll see you next time.